Thank you for having me here today. It's always fantastic to be here in Lund. I come all the way from Copenhagen, all the way from Nasdaq in Copenhagen. We are working as a Nordic team, so I have some very close colleagues in Stockholm. And we are covering the biotech space, the healthcare space, the life science space, and of course all other sectors. But the sector here, it's very close to our heart. So let's jump into it. I have made an agenda for today around the markets, how we see them in the Nordic, how we see them in the US, a little bit about the trends, what we see into the IPO space, and I will try as well to give some kind of a small hope for the smaller companies when we are talking about capital. It has been definitely a challenge, but I will come back to that. So, how does the scene look like in the Nordic? We have around 200 companies listed within the healthcare space. 150 of those, they are from Sweden. And many of you are also here today. Some very small ones, and of course we have some very, very large ones as well. So when it comes to market cap, it is definitely in Copenhagen. We see the most of it, Nordics as a good example, but the number of companies, you have a lot here in Sweden. And that back to the hope, and back to where we see the markets right now. This is a very nice picture of an index we don't use that often. It's all companies in the Nordic on the main market. So more than 600 companies. If you look at the small arrow, it's going up. And when we look at all the different indices we're going to see today, I mean, from it was around October, November last year, there happened something around the interest rate that made this. So what's important here is to look at the larger indices like this one is almost all-time high, which is meaning the investors are getting a very nice return, which hopefully also should have a spillover effect to some of the smaller companies. That has we definitely seen in the past. So when the companies are becoming too expensive, you need to divert a little bit, put it into some smaller tickets in other interesting companies, and we have a lot. Another fun fact here is maybe that Novo Nordisk, if you take the 14 largest Swedish company, they have the same market cap as Novo Nordisk today. So it's insane. It's insane what Novo Nordisk has become. And I know AstraZeneca you have as well here, but they're not covering that much because it's not a Swedish entity anymore. So just saying that Novo Nordisk is 20% of the market cap when we look into the all-share index in the Nordic, 20%. And back to some of the other indices, we have first, the most interesting one maybe also for you here. It's First North Healthcare Nordic, and as you can see here, it's a little bit from the top and down to the bottom. And then you can say, what happened? Yeah, you have all been there. We know the numbers that came into the market in 20 and 21. Zero interest rate, a fantastic climate for everything, especially also on the exchange. So we saw a lot of companies coming into the market. Some will maybe say too many. We heard that as well today, maybe also from our friend from the venture fund. And then you can say, what is then the problem? One of the problems is, of course, that back to investors, a lot of private investors came into them, which is good, but it should also have had some more professional in to being there from, you can say, almost from inception to commercialization, or at least some of the way. So not that interesting to jump in to capital raises if you don't have a good backup for the larger company. So that is what we are seeing. But on the other hand, you can say almost the only way is up from now on. And back to the index before, it's almost all-time high, so there will be a spillover to the other index by time. It's more a question of when. Small cap index in Nordic, more than 200 companies. In the First North, we have more than 100 companies, also on the way up. So, yeah, everything is as it should be here. And back to the numbers again. It was some insane years in 20 and 21 when it comes to the number of listings. You have the number of listings over here. We saw listings. When we say listings, it's not only IPOs in our way we calculate it. It is also moved from Spotlight to Nasdaq. It's moved up from First North to Main Market and so on. But you can have a look at the numbers, 166 in 21. So far this year on First North, 3. And again, so the only way is up from here. What we are seeing in the market right now is some more interest. We also are coming to see some more listings, definitely some more listings in the months to come, especially in Sweden, and also after the summer break. So, I mean, it's heating up, but pretty slowly. And again, once again, this is the turnover and the number of trades in the First North shares. And again, you can see a huge peak in 21, and then it went down as we are now. So we have got from before in 19 and 18, there was around 300 companies on First North. Today we are around 500. So still there, you have a per number of listed company, a lower turnover on a daily basis compared to before. So there's definitely room for improvement, and we should definitely have the investor appetite back and the risk appetite back. But again, as we know right now, with an interest rate pretty high, hopefully going a little bit down, but it's very complex and has been for pretty long time. So let's see how it will go with the inflation rate, and hopefully it will go a bit lower, because we need to have some more activity around this, and definitely the interest rate will help on that. One good case we had, and that's also back to the numbers, we had a very interesting case last year. I know the Danes know this one, probably also some of the Swedes. It was Cupra. They went into the market in a pretty awful time at the year in the spring. There was a lot of crisis with the banks, but they managed to do it. And you can say why? Yeah, maybe because they have some figures, they have a result, they have a 2-leg strategy, they have the biotech and all that, and then they also have a service leg. So they managed to do it. They are 3 founders, and whether the price was 10, 9, or 11 didn't mean that much to them. So they floated it, and as many of you also know, it has been a pretty nice journey when suddenly the whole world wanted to have not obesity, they didn't want to have it, but at least when suddenly it was top of the mind. So interesting, pretty slow start, and suddenly people found out that they also have some potential drugs in that area, and then a story. But again, as you also know, in this area with life science, it will go up. Right now, it's very modern, everything about that, and let's see in a half year's time what will be modern. I don't know, but that's at least how we see it right now. Back to the US. Where are we now? Just set the scene again here. So how many companies do we have in the US? We have around 5,700 listed companies in total. A little less than that, 3,300 is on Nasdaq in in New York. And pretty large company we have here. Around 20% of all our listed company on Nasdaq is within the biotech. So I mean, very important for us in the US as well. When we look into this again, just to mind the arrow up here, Novo Nordics is number 12 largest company in the US compared to a lot of the other ones. You know, you only have Eli Lilly as a larger one, and then it's again insane to see how much they have in market cap and how much they mean for, especially also the society in Denmark. When we look into the biotech as well, interesting to see that you have one also here in top 6, GenMap, so a large player as well. So fantastic we can have these players from the Nordic coming into the US. We of course also have some very small listed companies, and they struggle the same way as you see here in the Nordic. Some will say more, even more. So again, a fantastic index here. It's only going one way from again in November up. Right now, all-time high, and you see all-time high in S&P and Dow Jones as well. Back to the story, when we're going to see that will definitely give some more interest for the smaller companies. So that's where we see the hope now. What that will mean also is probably something about the IPOs. I will come back to that. When we look into the small cap in the US, and this is biotech as well, yeah, it looked like almost what you saw before with the First North. A very nice top in February. Different from here is maybe that they have more professional investors into it, and still you can see how it declined. And it started, I mean, it topped out in February 21. And that was at the time where we had the first something around the interest rate that will come and impact, and the Fed would probably go into some consideration to increase the rates. So you can say this is the most risk index we have in the US, and you can say how fast it went down when suddenly somebody maybe felt that there will be some impact on the interest rate. So room for improvement as well here. Number of US listings. Again, it looks almost like what we saw in the Nordic. Pretty insane year 21. More than 1,000, and this is IPOs. This is not listings. This is fully IPOs. And back to a pretty poor year last year, and this year we had 75. So again, heating up slowly. Within the biotech scene, on the right-hand side, I showed what we saw at listings in the US last year. Not that many biotech companies, around 20 in this, I can see. But what we have seen in the first quarter this year in the US is a capital raise that is 3 times as high like the quarter last year as a Q1. So I mean, it is heating up slowly. The tick sizes are becoming bigger, but still compared to before the crisis and the pandemic, I mean, when you want to go to the US at that time, especially for the companies in the Nordic, there was definitely a capital raise above 100 million USD to go into the market. And typically also local. But I mean, in the meantime, we have seen some very small companies listed in the US. I would say some of them at the size at First North, capital raises of 10 million USD, even below. But that numbers are going up now again, and hopefully also hitting into the biotech space. So that was the market. Now we have some new thing that we are going to look into to predict and look a little bit more into the forecast of IPO going forward. This is the Nasdaq US IPO Pulse Index that's made 3-4 months ago. It's updated each quarter, and it will forecast how the direction will be and how many listings we then should have. And now I have pointed up the 6 factors that are put into this. So it's something about interest rate, something about returns, valuations, investor sentiments, and so on. So let's look into Q1 and see how it looks. It looks great. But let's see whether that will stand. So what we're seeing here is every time, back to 2015, every time you see the gray area, the green one is going down. The green one, that is a number of listings in the US per quarter. So gray, and then the white one, yeah, then it's chipping up again or going in average. And the blue one then, yeah, that is the one that all these six factors are put down into to predict what we are seeing going forward. So it's 5 or 6 months ahead of where we are now. So the forecast says this is going up. So the green one needs to follow up. So Q1 was around 40 listings, and then it should follow up. Otherwise, we can't use it. But again, this is made by some clever people in the US. My fingers crossed for it will keep. They have looked a lot of data back in time, and it seems like it is working. So fingers crossed for at least for the IPO part, which also will mean more capital into already listed companies and so on. So by that, I definitely hope this will work. And just look into the numbers just to give you a little bit more understanding of what we saw in Q1 then. So yeah, the interest rate, it went down 1 year back. The VIX index is also this volatility index we always are looking on. Pretty tricky it has been, you can say, back in the days, 2-3 years ago, when we have a low VIX around 15, there was a lot of IPOs. Now it's around 12. That's not the case. So it went a little bit up year over year. Returns, yeah, just look back at the first index. I mean, fantastic returns to S&P and so on, and Nasdaq. Valuations, yeah, going up, and investors' sentiment the same in the US. And then the last one, Nasdaq data, that's some internal things that we also are putting into this. So by that, it looks very positive going forward. Then, of course, I know there's a lot of other things into this. One is the interest rate, geopolitics, everything. But at least this tells us we are in the right direction. Again, just a picture of the VIX, just to show you how it goes. It is like the VIX, every time you see some huge events coming into the market, you could see it back in 20, the pandemic, it goes very fast up. And back to where we are now, you almost have a VIX, a volatility index, as low as you can have. So you can say, by that, we should see a lot of listings. At least it was like that before. General trends, and also a little bit more about the IPOs, and a kind of a sum up of what I've been talking about here. So again, the interest rate, it is tricky. It has been tricky. It's going down, but still, when we compared the 10 years interest rate in US, I mean, right now it's the same as in 2007. So it is. Some will say high, or I would just say it's normal, and we are back to normal. The right cocktail on investors, back to that point again, yeah, you need to have some long-only investors into your case as well. It is very nice to have the private investors, especially on the exchange, to set set the daily prices. But it is important to have some long investors interested in to take the next round, go into the market and back you up. So very important. And back to that, there is a lot of money, you know it. There is a lot of money out there. But again, for the right cases, a lot of selectivity, a lot of interest in very late stage companies, very interested in putting a lot of money in large tickets in the late stage company. But again, that will change. We have seen that over the years. It's more a question of when. And then again, one thing we sometimes forget, I mean, a lot of the companies that are here today, I believe you are more mature today than you were 3 years ago when your share price topped. So you're coming closer to the final end goal of the company. Maybe you have got a more sustainable company as well. But when you're looking at your share price, it's halved, it's 20%, it's 10%. At least a lot of the smaller ones. I know the larger ones, it's another case when you are cash positive suddenly. So, I mean, by that, it's important to think that, I mean, you are closer to the end point, and the investors know as well. So, interesting and a lot of good companies to pick up on. And again, I mean, the flagship index, as mentioned, yeah, they are all on all-time high, and by that you can say a lot of the companies and the listed companies are very expensive. So the smaller ones are maybe more fair priced. Some will say cheap, and also my last sentence here is why we're waiting for the IPOs. There's a lot of good investment around you also in this area today. So I mean, for the investors, it's probably time to connect to them and to know them better. And then let's see where it all ends. At least I'm very positive for the year to come and the year after. So it will be interesting to follow. I think that was the words.
Well, thank you so much, Peter, for a very interesting presentation. Cautiously optimistic, can we say that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have any questions from the audience, perhaps? We have a couple of questions maybe for Peter. Jonas.
I happen to have a question. Now, I mean, it was great to see the graphs where the little green arrows were pointing upwards. I think everyone can use some optimism, but if we are more of healthy skeptics, do you think, or it could be a hard question, but do you think that the biotech sector, which has had a really rough time now, since the extreme years in 2020, 2021, do you think this sector in particular has more of an uphill struggle regaining the confidence of investors, seeing as so many companies have seen their market caps go down by 40 to 90% or something?
Yeah, I mean, at least I think, I mean, we're all private investors, and I think we all have some shares in some of the companies that have been hit very hard. And of course, that will be a bit more difficult to understand why you should go into a new IPO within a biotech company. On the other hand, you can say, by time, people luckily forget and also have shares in larger company, so they are hopefully ready again to go into that. So, but I'm fully agree. It is difficult to see, especially maybe on the IPO scene right now for the smaller IPOs within the biotech sector. On the other hand, you can say for the already listed companies, back to some of my comments here, I mean, some of them, if you pick the right ones, they can have such a nice journey from here. And hopefully some of them are getting the right investors in as well, as we heard earlier in one of the earlier seen here today from Hans, that they've suddenly got, because they worked a lot to get the right investors in, finally find some investors that are interested in also to invest in already listed companies. So I mean, for the already listed companies, and then with the very fair and very low share prices, I mean, hopefully, I believe that I mean, you're not putting all your eggs in the same basket. So I hope that will happen now, and we can see it in some company as well, also within the biotech.
When you showed the indices for life science companies, I suppose that included both biotech companies as well as medtech companies.
Yeah.
If you were to drill down into those two columns, would you see any difference between the performance of life science companies, biotech companies versus medtech companies?
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. I haven't seen that. We don't break it that much down in our indices. You can say this index is covered by all this more than 110 companies, and of course there'll be some pretty large ones as well. Vimian is one of them. So they cover, I think, 30% in the index or something like that. But I don't have the figures. I don't know. Some of the medtech companies, health tech companies that have had some pretty hard time as well. So I don't have a fully answer to that.
Thank you so much.
Happy to be here. Thank you.